Hello, and welcome along to tonight's stream. I hope that everyone is doing well. Just close out this tab I've got open here. So, tonight's stream is basically going to be about me playing with some stuff. Hello, Maurice. How's it going? So I don't necessarily have any coding to do tonight. This is going to be me playing along with something I haven't played with yet. I played with it for like 2 minutes. You don't have access. Oh, are you stuck at the ad section of the stream? That's unfortunate. Oh, you don't have access to Codespaces yet. I see what you're saying. Okay, sorry. So let's clarify. So what I'm playing with tonight is going to be me hacking with and figuring out how it works. Is this thing called GitHub Codespaces? So if you haven't, which is what Maurice is saying, you have to request. This is a feature that's currently in a private beta, and you have to request access. So you can do that just from github.com/features Codespaces. So let's put this into the chat here so that we've got it. So you can click on that and you can request early access, and you will be informed at some point in the future when you have access to it. So I have access to it. Hello Kim, how's it going? I haven't played with it properly yet, so I thought the focus of tonight's stream would be basically setting it up and seeing what it does. So once you have access to it, there's a couple of things get lit up. So for example, if I go to github.com, what happens is, or what I've noticed, is that there's a new Codespaces link at the top here, which if you click on it, will take you to here. So I currently have no active Codespaces. In addition, on a particular any of my repositories and any public repositories, if I click on the code tab, whereas before you would normally just have your HTTPS, your SSH, and GitHub CLI commands to get it, you also have this additional option which is open with Codespaces. And if you click on that, then you have the option of creating a new Codespace, or I think using an existing one. So that's what I've noticed in terms of being signed up to the beta. That is what I've noticed in terms of the GitHub user interface changes. For your information, you can test out Codespaces in your local environment using VS Code and Docker without being. So I was kind of coming onto that a little bit, because the other thing that I did just before the stream was I went into extensions and I've installed the Visual Studio Codespaces extension. Now, my understanding, so to answer that one, Kim, in terms of the dev containers that you can set up, my understanding is that they're essentially interchangeable. That whatever dev containers you set up locally should be able to be put into GitHub Codespaces as well. But I haven't tested any of that. But I was speaking to Brett Miller at the weekend, and he's been playing with essentially Codespaces through VS Code running locally with Docker, and he's been able to get it to work both locally through Docker and also in GitHub Codespaces. So I've installed this extension, and what it asked me to do was within the extension setups, you can specify what account provider that you want to use. So initially this was uninitialized, and then you have the option of either Microsoft or GitHub. Now, I think the distinction here is that there was a Visual Studio Codespaces, and now there's also a GitHub Codespaces. So the one that I've wanted to play with is the GitHub Codespaces. Okay, so that's what I've got here. I'm not going to start in Visual Studio Code because I want to start in the browser, which is the main draw, or one of the main draws of this. So if I come up here, I'm going to use this Cake Cake.NET version detector as my sample for how to do stuff, right? So what I think I want to do is I want to create a new code space pointing at this one. So again, I can either do that through here, or if I go to Codespaces, I can say create your first code space. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and you'll see that I pre-populated this already because I went to search to see if I could do it through here. So I'm going to say I want that, and I want to look at the develop branch. So if I say create code space, my understanding is that magic is going to happen at this point. So what this is doing, I don't have in this repository any sort of .dev container folder or .dev container.json. So if you read through the documentation, it kind of mentions that you can completely configure the code space how you want it. I don't have any of that. So my understanding is that this initialization phase is going to take a default Docker container that has everything that you could possibly want in it. So it's going to have Node, it's going to have NPM, it's going to have probably Ruby, it's going to have Python, pretty much everything installed on it. So it maybe has too much stuff, or it maybe has stuff that you don't want or don't need in it, and that's where the customization capabilities comes from. But for this one, I'm just going to say, create me a new code space using the default. Example of such a config. He's been here playing already. Not using GitHub Codespaces, but a special Docker container for C#. Okay, so let's take a look at what Kim's got going on here. So my understanding is that this link that Kim's got here should be a JSON file. In that JSON file, yes, that JSON file controls the makeup of the container that you want to run. So in this one, Kim's got, he wants to use a Docker file. These are the arguments to pass into that when you're creating that container. And then there are settings like the customization. So that's the other thing that's really cool here, is that once this code space is spun up, you're actually able to, let's not get too far ahead. Let's just wait for it to be spun up, and then we'll, oh, what? Initializing environment failed. What happened there? That's not good. That should have worked. Let's stumble at the first hurdle. So what did this do? Is this up and running then? You break it, you buy it. Oh, okay. Well, that didn't work, did it? Okay, let's delete this then. Okay. So we tried it this way. Let's see if there's any difference if we create it this way then. Opening code spaces, create code. I don't think it should make any difference. Let's try that again. Because that should have worked. Now, obviously, this is GitHub Codespaces is in beta, so it is subject to problems, I guess. Hello, Manfred. How are you? So let's see if we can get a code space set up then. Let's see what happens. Can code spaces be created for all? Yes, if you're in the public beta, which you may or may not be. So we spoke about it just before you came on, I think, that you can request early access from github.com/feature/codespaces. And in here, I did actually say that. So let me clarify. If I scroll down, is Codespaces available for all repositories? While in the limited beta, Codespaces will be available for repositories you own and public repositories. So yes is the answer. No, because things aren't working. So at the minute, you see, it didn't work there either. This is not a good start. Why is this not running? Huh. Someone tweeted to me earlier about something. I'm gonna send a screenshot of this. I'm gonna save this as an image, and I'm gonna save it and tweet it to Nick, who is pick another repo. That was gonna be my next thing as well. But let me send this tweet while I remember. So I'm gonna save this. Save as. Well, which one were you playing with, Matthias? and we might just start there for Nick. Images, temp, save, pop that out and say temp for Nick here. Not off to a great start. Okay. See, well, let's get rid of this one to start with. So in here, let's delete this one. Fine. Let's go a chocolatey diff then. See if this works. So chocolatey diff. I don't see why it would make any difference, but let's try this then. So open with Codespaces, new Codespace. And let's see what this does. Okay, so there's another one that Matthias has used. So maybe let's see if we can. Oh, hold on. This is doing something else. So I wonder why it didn't work with the other one then. So it's building a container at this point. So it's using that default container and it's going to create a code space that we can then do stuff in, right? Oh. Okay, so this is the thing that blows me away to start with, right? This is Google Chrome, right? No smoke and mirrors. This is Google Chrome. This is VS Code running in Google Chrome. It just boggles the mind, right? But essentially, this is my full-blown IDE running in the browser, right? So what this is picked up on is, as we spoke about when Maurice was on the show a couple of weeks ago, based on the fact that, oh, look at that. It's okay, so it's doing some more stuff. So it's because I have settings sync enabled, it's currently installing all of the extensions on this instance that I have configured in my normal Visual Studio Code. So you'll currently see it flashing here. So it's currently installing all of my, I don't know, I'm not sure if I want that. Because what I was going to say was that this thing down at the bottom here is, this is picking up on the fact that Maurice has a settings recommendations here. So Maurice recommends that in order to do development of chocolatey diff, these are the PowerShell. These are the GitHub. Start again. These are the VS Code extensions that you should have installed. So it's Visual Studio Code running in the browser is still having the normal functionality of VS Code running locally on your machine. So onto this container, it's installing all of my pre-baked extensions, and then it is asking if I want to install the recommended extensions based on this code base. Now that's pretty cool. You have to give that, right? Yes. So Maurice, it's exactly that point. So I've seen that comment in the chat there. Maybe couldn't infer the language to use for the cake add-in repo. So maybes, but I don't think it does any sort of language stuff at that point, because it's literally just running a default container. Because if I go back to here, so that was the failed one. If I go to the documentation, which was, now I read something about that earlier. So where did I read that in the documentation? That was when you personalize your code in here. So in here, when you don't specify anything, you will get the default, which is this one. I read about this either. Yeah. So when you don't specify one, this is what you get. You'll get this Docker file with all of its stuff. So it's running from the base universal Linux. It does a bunch of stuff. And then I believe that there's a setup script that it runs, what it runs through and installs a bunch of stuff. So like I say, it's got Ruby, it's Python, PowerShell, Java, Go, Gradle, Docker, everything in the kitchen sink is installed in this thing. So it shouldn't make any difference. But anyway, so this is me connected to, this is me running in the browser, and this is the part I still don't get. This is me running in the browser with full Visual Studio Code goodness in here. So as an example, if we go to the ChocoDiff thing here and look at one of the public files, then all of the sort of normal code folding, PowerShell Pro, that's because I've got that installed. All of the normal code folding, I'm assuming that we're going to get PowerShell IntelliSense and stuff as well. So if I delete this, I'm going to get errors all over the place. I've got problems, it's missing it. So all of that functionality is there in the box, right? And in theory, how do we build this guy? So there's a build.ps1. So if I go to the terminal and I do build.ps1 and run that, it didn't like it. Why did it not like it? The term set environment build, the term set build environment is not recognized. So why did that not work? Vim mode's on. It's on, look. I hit escape. Shift A. Double D. U. Vim mode's on, man. It's on. It's all about the Vim. Posh 7. I don't know. Let's have a look. PS version table. No. I've got PS7 here. Okay then. So let's try that. So we're going to do a build.ps1 task test bootstrap. See if that runs. See what that does. So personally, I would argue if that's what's needed, that's what the build.ps1 should do by default. But also, you need the build helpers module to do the normal build. So is that not what the bootstrapper is going to do for me? Or is there other work I need to do here? I'm going to let that see if that's running. But like I say, I don't know what other folks think. But this is mind-boggling. So this is not running locally on my machine here. This is running build, I think, in the cloud, on a Docker container, running somewhere that I don't really care about, and it's letting me run all this stuff. Let's see if this finishes. And then what I would like to do is I want to try another one. I don't necessarily want to get too hung up on why it's not running. But what I did want to have a look at is I wanted to try connecting to that code space from VS Code. So let's move from the browser version of VS Code. Let's run the same code space from within VS Code. I want to play with that. So we're in VS Code here. Now the new extension that I installed added this guy. This is the Remote Explorer. So again, by default, it asked me, it was looking at WSL, so Windows Subsystem for Linux targets. So if you have that installed, you could use that as the remote code space, but I chose to change it to Codespaces, and I should be able to hit refresh here and I should see, so this is the code space that I created. So if I click on that guy and connect to Codespace, look at that. So it's opening the Chocolatey Diff project from within that remote code space. So again, this is not running, this won't be running locally on my machine. This is, again, Docker container instantiated within GitHub somewhere to then allow me to view the code and potentially run the build. Mind-boggling. Okay, so the other one, the one I wanted to play with, and I'm going to go back to it, and I want to see what happens, is I wanted to look at the one that Matthias has got, which is this one. Because what I saw him tweet about was he installed, once he had it up and running, he installed the Cake global tool onto it, and then he also installed the IntelliSense. So in the browser, he was able to get IntelliSense for code completions for the Cake script running in the browser, and I want to play with that. So I'm going to try creating a new code space looking at his Cake group repository. So let's go ahead. Hey Arthur, how's it going? So I'm going to say no active code spaces. This will create a that's fine. So I'm going to create a new code space. We are playing with code spaces in GitHub and trying to figure out. So Maurice, what Kim was referring to is that when I tried to run that build, it failed with something else, and the suggestion was that potentially there are some dependencies that I need to be installed, but there's some other stuff happening here that I don't fully understand what's going on. But I also don't want to get too hung up on it not running, because I want to play with other stuff while I'm here. So where did it go? So we're back here. So we're trying to initialize a new code space. So this would give me a second code space. Yeah, well, that was the command I ran, which was build PS1 task test bootstrap, and it gave me an error. The term invoke script analyzer is not recognized by the name of a commandlet. I'm not sure. I'm willing to try something else because I can keep this code space open. So that's the other thing that I was reading about before the stream is the code space, once it's created, will go, it will shut down or it will become inactive after 30 minutes of inactivity. And then you can start it up again, because going forward after the beta, there is a cost associated with it. So where was the cost? There was a link to cost. And here, it gave some prices. So it is charge per hour, I think it said. Yeah, compute usage is billed per hour. So it's 9 pence per hour to run the basic one. Or and then it goes up to 16 or 17 pence and then 34 pence. So depending on what you're doing, see, that didn't work either. What's going on there? That's two. Yep. Try two now and both have failed. Let me reply. Last one I tried was one. Was able to get this to work. So where was the link to that one? That was, I'm just replying again to Nick, who I believe is part of the team that is working on this. So that's kind of why I want to get him some information. Community, what am I doing? Chocolatey community. And then it was this one. And then I'll just follow up with a comment there. It says, it shouldn't matter what is contained within the repository, right? So back to here. So that was that. Because yeah, I would really like to see the cake stuff working, if I'm honest. So this one worked, this one didn't work. So if I click back in there, it's failed. So let's delete this one again. And then that one was all, that's just creating a second instance, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. How about we try this then? How about we try spinning up Kim's one that has the custom dev container, and let's see what that does. Let's do this then. Open with Codespaces, new Codespace. Let's see what this does. So this is a dev container that you've been running locally, Kim, correct? Let's see. Okay then, let's see if we get a custom Docker image. I never know if it's a container or an image. I can never remember the terminology. But let's see what happens here. I pretty much use local dev containers for all my projects now. So container is the running instance, and an image is what it's based on, correct? I think I've got that round the right way. Okay, because what would be interesting, so in terms of the, don't get much in the way of feedback here, do we? Why is that not working? I mean, that could be down to something in the dev container instance, but it's also, it doesn't seem to be specific to, I mean, we've had it fail for both a custom one and for using the kitchen sink container. I wonder why this one works. We'll try another one. What would be another one to try? Let's do a new code space on cake dot, which one has been updated recently? 7-zip. Let's play with Nils's cake.7-zip and say create code space. Let's see if that one works. Could try that. Okay. Well, if this one doesn't work, then we'll go. So you're suggesting the cake example repository. I'm willing to try that. See if this one works. I mean, it would be nice to have more feedback here. That one, the one that worked wasn't on get 13. As in, what do you mean on get 13? I mean, I have forks of all of these, but I would imagine I have a fork of Choco Diff as well. I don't. Yeah. So I have forks of all of them. So that didn't work either. Delete. So we're not having much luck. So let's try cake build example. Try this one. Opening Codespaces. new code space. Codespace looked like different org. Did it? GitHub.com Codespaces. So it's GEP13 and then the I'm not seeing, that looks the same to me, or what I was expecting to see. But it's still got GEP13 chocolatey community chocolatey diff. GEP13 cake build example. How is that different? What am I missing? Okay, so what am I not seeing then? When you say it's coming from a different, what do you mean? I don't follow what you're suggesting. Didn't work either. Delete that one. Could be a permission thing, perhaps. Possibly, but I mean that's like 6 or 7 failures that we've had, as opposed to not having much luck here. Try again with so this one is coming from me rather than from the org. So we'll try that one. Let's try that one. See what that does. Oh, okay. Could be onto something there. So the one that failed before, let's try that again then. So let's do new code space. And let's do the first one that we started with, cake.net version detector. So I have 2. So I think this was the one that we tried before. Let's try this one then and create code space. Beta limit. Okay, so let's get rid of that one a second. Could new repo in get. I mean, I could try that. Yep. But the one that I tried before was cakecontrib.net version detector. I'm curious whether if I use my fork of it, there we go. Okay, so it must be some issue with the cake, you trying to initialize it pointing at that one rather than my fork of it. Okay, I mean, we can just have to remember that, I guess. What's that? Connect to Codespace token exchange. Okay, don't know what that's doing. Okay, so this one is the example repository, and this one is cake.net version detector. So this is the one I think I want to play with. So let's do the next part. Let's install cake on this. And interesting, well, if we go back, well, okay, let's do this. I've got another thought. so many thoughts with this. GitHub.com/Codespaces. Let's delete this one, and then here, and then let's do a wee test. Let's have a look in here. GitHub, organizations, cake, contrib. Have I got cake.warp? Nope. So git clone https github.com/get13/cake.warp.git. Have I not got? Come on now. GitHub.com cake contrib cake.warp. I thought I already had one. That's why I'm confused. I'm going to go and check. I don't have it. Okay, fine. So let's use. So into here, gh repo fork cake contrib cake.warp. Right, fine. I'm doing it. Would you like to clone the fork? Yes. I've also got a new release that I need to set up. Oh, sorry, cd into cake.warp. Get remote -v. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Love it. Can still be used even if you have a fork. The forking itself will just be skipped. Genius. Genius. Git fetch upstream. Git rebase upstream. That should already be done. So my little dance that I'm doing here, I don't need to do it. So now, if I go back to here and I say new code space for cake.warp, and let's use my version of it. Let's see if this starts up Kim's custom dev container this time. So how will we know? Do you have something specifically on this container that won't exist on the other one? So on this one, if I get rid of all these again, I get rid of all these, and let's zoom in here. Right, in my terminal, I don't have .NET Cake as an example. The Cake .NET Global tool isn't installed. Do you have Cake installed on this dev container? The Docker file installs Markdown lint, commit-zen, commit-lint, and ec-lint. Okay, so that didn't work. Okay, so that might still be a failure that we need to figure out, but that could be related to your JSON file. But okay, so we'll not worry about that one. So we've narrowed down the failures to having to come from my forks, which is fine. So on this one, I should be able, so .NET is installed, .NET's there. So I can do .NET tool install cake.tool, and I can do that globally. Matthias, if I'm doing anything that's wrong, feel free to shout out. But if I do this, that should install cake.tool globally on this container. Not at all. I was just trying to help figure out if it's definition global is failing. Are you seeing? I'm just going to take a second to reply to Nick again. Seems to be an issue when trying to create a code space for the cake contrib /cake .NET version vector. if I create a code space for get13 cake.net version detector, i.e. my fork, it works fine. Is this expected? Should I be able to create a code space for a repository under an organization? If not, is there any way to see some more information about the failure creating the codes? Okay, so there's a message there in Slack. Blum, 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 blum. I'll see what I can do. Well, no, absolutely, and that's kind of why I confirmed. So that kind of unable to initialize isn't the best experience at the minute. So I've just installed .NET Cake, .NET Cake. I've just installed the Cake.tool, .NET Global Tool. So in theory now, if I run .NET Cake, it should do stuff. Now that's fine because this code space has a recipe.cake rather than a build.cake. So I have to be a little bit more specific and say that I want to run the recipe.cake. So having just installed the .NET Cake global tool, it's running. It's now hopefully going to run the full build of the recipe.cake, which includes cake.recipe, and that didn't work. Now that's okay though, I think, because cake.graph doesn't run under .NET Core. So what we would need to do is check out a branch, which was the PR branch that I created, which was that one. So if I do git checkout feature gh58, close a bunch of stuff. So make sure that we're here, which we are. Now if I do .NET Cake with recipe.cake, this should hopefully work. But yes, Kim, you're absolutely right. There is too many tools on the go here. Let's see if this works. So what's it doing in here? So now it's doing some stuff, I think. So now it's adding a bunch of cake add-ins. So let's try a few things here then. So let's delete that. Delete permanently. What? That's sure. Delete. And the other thing I want to do is I want to walk up to here and I want to remove this. I want to use go away PowerShell tool. I might have to turn that synchronization off in my running containers. And we can say ampersand version equals 2.0.1. Save that. And I'm going to try running that again. A lot of failures. .NET cake, recipe.cake. One more time. Something off with the weird. Try this one more time. So now we're getting a tools folder with that version of recipe.cake. Cake.recipe. So okay, see if this works. Type or namespace. I would have thought Git is installed. So why is that failing? Testing to see if valid Git repository. Any thoughts on, oh, there's maybe something else required on this base image for Git version to work. What do we think? May not have. How would I do you know how I would confirm that? What would I need to do to confirm that? Okay, so let's it is an Ubuntu image, I believe, so let me check. Okay, perfect. So while you're doing that, oh, hold on. Copy. Linux for the win. Yes. Nothing. Use libgit2 instead. Okay. Nothing. So is it just dpkg install libgit2? No. Need an action option. Oh, I'm happy to sudo it if that's what's required. I don't know if the command's right. I don't think the command is right. Okay, so we're going to do sudo apt-get install libgit2 -dev. Yep, you can do sudo in the container. Yep. Oh, what did that do? Do you want to continue? Why did it abort? Oh, it's doing stuff now. I was on it, Maurice. I took a guess. Checks me with my Linux knowledge. So what I was going to do while that was happening, I was going to go back over to dev leads code group, cake group, and I was going to fork that. I think it created it already, so it is there. So I should be able to create a new code space for that one. So that would remove the cake.recipe from the equation. So let's end here and let's create a code space here for that one while this stuff's running. Okay, so if I run the command that I did before again, which was this one, there's now some stuff in it. Okay, .NET cake recipe.cake. See what happens this time round. And if this is required, this is where the customizations would come in. So, oh, so close. Setting up tools. What does that mean? How far did it get? So it got past the testing. Current branch is 58. Testing to see if current commit contains a tag. No tag is present. Printing the parameters. Genius. Setting up tools. Interesting. So it got into here, and then it did something in there. Do you maybe have a missing call in the recipe.cake file? Possibly. As a sanity check, we go back up to here and say cake.net version detector. This is not a great test because it's on Windows, but in theory, if we go and do the same thing, which is going to be taking this part out, I need to figure out how to do this in Vim. Manfred's still on. He should be able to tell me. How do I delete a section? Why is that cursor still being like that as well? Seriously? What? Go away and leave me alone. There's a bunch of stuff happening on this thing. Try this again. This is really not liking what I'm trying to do to it. There we go. Version equals 2.0.1. Save that. You know what? It doesn't matter. So the other one is this one. Attempting to reconnect. Okay. So this is Matthias's one. So this doesn't have the overhead of cake.recipe. So let's stick with this one now that we have a running container of it. So we're going to have to install cake global tool again on this one. So we go to terminal and we're going to do .NET tool install cake.tool global. Okay. Matthias has got a much more trimmed down version of cake in here, which is fine. Go away, PowerShell tools. Okay, so I think we should be able to now run .NET Cake. And let's see what this does. I was coming to that. Install cake. Okay, so that's now running the cake script. So now what I need to do in here is, if I go up here and look for, so you did this, Matthias, and install IntelliSense support now? Is that what you did? Install IntelliSense from the pan. So we've got, hold on, we're, right, okay. So install IntelliSense support. That will install some stuff in here under cake.bakery. Beautiful. So then in theory, if I come up to here and I do information, oh, look at that. So this, I didn't need to restart it. It's working. It just worked. So this is me getting IntelliSense for the cake information alias through cake.bakery, which is running as a module of OmniSharp, running in the browser from a Docker container, hosting and storing all the code in it. So that, I think, Kim, is part of the documentation work that Pascal is currently working on. I don't know if you've been following along, but Pascal has been completely overhauling the documentation section of the website. So there are, that's an interesting artifact that's happening there. Why did that not happen on the home page? That's bizarre. But what he's breaking it up now into running builds, writing builds, integrations in terms of editors, etc. So if it's not there already, and I don't think it is, there will be information going into these sections. So cake needs to be in the path, which is the case of .NET Cake. And then bakery needs to be in the path. So we added that into the tools folder. So in here, cake.bakery tools, that is then available in here. So then obviously we've got the other aliases. So if we were to do ms build as an example, ms build, I think, .NET Core. Why are we not getting suggestions for those? That's interesting. Oh, bye, Manfred. Thank you for coming along. Why is that not working? There wasn't information already, so we know it's not that. What's another one to try that works out of the box? You think we need to restart OmniSharp? Output from OmniSharp. Why is that not working? Fix typo. That's bizarre. Oh, do I need to get the most recent version of OmniSharp to get this to work properly? I remember that there was something about getting the most recent version to make it all work. Or have I got that wrong, Matthias? And if I do you remember what I need to do to get that to work? I'm going to do a wee search in Slack because I know that he posted this one. I think it's released now. Okay. How can I tell what version of OmniSharp is installed? OmniSharp. Settings. Completion is working again in OmniSharp with VS Code. Please add open user settings. Sure. What do you mean just refresh page? OmniSharp. Let's close this again. Build.cake. Oh, you're just refreshing the page is what you're saying. Okay. .NET. As in refresh this page. Let's give it a try. Let's do this then. Thinking. Okay. No idea what happened there. Get blame kicked in. Right. Okay, so I'm not convinced that that is doing what I think we want it to do. So we're going to open up the settings and we're going to look for OmniSharp .path. I'm going to get there. They're lying. You can go away a sec. How do we change it? MS build, logging level, max projects. Wait for debugger. Where's the button that I want to allow this one? OmniSharp. Okay, so we don't have an OmniSharp. So if I go in here, go here, and I say omnisharp dot path. Seriously. Omnisharp dot path latest. Sure. Why is that grayed out? Setting cannot be applied in this window. It will be applied when you open local window. What does that mean? Try rerouting that. This isn't going quite as swimmingly as I would have liked, but we'll get there. Output from omnisharp logs. Try that again then. Does it output? Yeah. So the version that Martin suggested is not that one. So it is a later version that I think we need to set. Why is this not? This setting cannot be applied in this window. It will be applied when you open local window. What does that mean? So confused as to what that means. Well, I'm trying user ones because that's what Martin suggested that I put it into. I can try it in the workspace. Not pasting. Oh. This setting can only be applied in user settings in local window or in remote settings in remote window. Okay. So does that mean I need to put it into this one? Oh, okay. Hold on. Save. OmniSharp configuration has changed. Yes. Okay, we've got the beta version coming through. Okay, so it's doing something. Okay. So we go back in here and do .NET loading. Taking longer this time. .NET Core, look at that. Okay, so that's got it. So then we have a path, or we have, there we go. Okay, so that seems to be working now. So completions are now working. Look at that. Okay. So we did need to add in, so the thing that we added in there eventually was this into the workspace settings. So we added that into the workspace settings, and that got us to get full IntelliSense and completion working. Okay. That was the thing I wanted to check. So what else did I want to try here? Should Should debugging working? Should debugging work? Latest as version should work too. Oh, I see. Okay. Right, I see what you're saying, yes. Do you know why I always avoid Okay, so should debugging work? Because I'm curious whether I can set a breakpoint here and have it do stuff now. So I think I want to try it out. So if I do cake, thank you very much, Stevie, appreciate it. Install debug dependencies. What does it do? Debug dependencies have been downloaded. So it's downloaded cake core CLR. So in theory, if I go into a new file called launch.json, and then here I add a configuration, and then here I do cake core CLR, and I hit save. What happens when I go into here and I say run? Now this isn't using cake.tool, but that's a side effect. That's a different discussion. So at the minute, this is going to use cake core CLR. Oh, look at that. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So again, to reiterate, the different pieces of technology in play at this point. That will restart the internet. It is not. It arrives from the world word. Oh, we're talking about Greek characters at that point. So I'm curious then. So there was a scope of work within the cake build cake VS Code to add the support. And now I think there's an issue that says in here exactly what needs to do. Debug should use, I think there's a working JSON in here that we can use. So if we grab this, copy, and go back to here and stop the debugging, and go back to our launch.json, and we replace this with this. So this will use .NET Cake. Oh, that won't work though. .NET Cake rather than cake.exe. And if I run that, then what does it do? Oh, we're getting different entry points this time because there was something that we did that changed this. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Amazing. So that is us debugging a cake script with cake.tool using cake.bakery to do IntelliSense and completions, running in a browser, running on a Docker container, in the cloud. Magic. Magic. Okay. So, 44 minutes left. What else do we want to test here? because I was curious to see. So what we had to do there to get this to work, we had to set up or install the dev container. No, we didn't do that. We used the there is no cloud, somebody else's computer. That's true. Many layers do one thing. How about we create a dev container to not have to install Cake after we've spun up the code space? We would want a code space that already had Cake installed. Cake VS Code add-in question mark. Oh, I see what you're talking about there. To show how it would be able to debug the code extension in the browser. Yeah. So let's do that then, shall we? Let's see how that works. But then I was going to get to a question there. Am I right in saying that in theory we should be able to use the Cake Docker images as the base for our dev container instance so that Cake was already installed? Should that work? And if it does, do we need to update our Docker images? Because currently I don't think they're up to date. But I think that's what I would like. I think that's what I would want to do, so that Cake was already installed, rather than having to do that work. But what you're suggesting there, I like it. So let's do this. So let's get rid of this one. And then let's go here and let's do the magic incantation that this one that Kim told me to do earlier. So if we do cake.build / cake-VS Code, would you like to clone the fork? Yes, I would. Oh, it's already there. Oh, it is already there. Okay, so cake, fetch, upstream, cake, git rebase, upstream, develop, git push, origin. Okay. So yes and yes plus bakery. Okay. Uncommitted changes. Oh, that's pretty cool. Oh, look at, oh, that's clever. Now, okay, points for that one. So it's saying this code space has uncommitted or unpushed changes. So those files that I changed on the file system, it's prompting me there. Am I sure that I want to do that? Okay, that's clever. Points for that. Points for whoever coded that part in. So I'm going to get rid of this code space as well. I don't need this at the minute. So if I do, let's do the same thing again. So I'm going to say yes to that. I'm going to close that code space, create your first code space, and I'm going to look for cake-VS Code, and I'm going to look for Git 13 version of it, which is this one, create code space. So the suggestion from Matthias here was that this is us running up some code that is a VS Code extension that when we debug it should create another VS Code instance from the current VS Code instance and debug the usage of it. Now that's just inception at that point. That's just crazy talk. But let's see if it works. On stream, not in a position. Check. Okay, that didn't work. I was excited to give that a try, but it didn't work. That didn't work at all. Worked for Clipimage. Okay, well maybe we should try that, should we? because that one didn't work. Delete this, and let's go directly to it then, shall we? get13/clip. I'm not going to be able to type that out. See if we can find it. Repositories. This one. Let's do open with Codespaces. Go and get my new Codespace. Dun, dun, dun. Is it going to work? So to answer my question though, Matthias, am I right in saying that currently the images on Docker Hub for Cake are not up to date? Is that right? Search for automated build. Go to this one. Are not up to date. Why can't? Cake build, not cake hyphen build. Fine. It is part of our release process, but there are issues with it currently. Need to switch to Tomb. What does that mean? So the current one, yeah, we're back at 0.34 rather than 0.38. That didn't work either. Don't know then. Need to switch to tool. I see what you're saying. Okay. Right, so let's do this then. As a final test though, let's see if we can go to here, new repositories. We've got 36 minutes. We're going to create a new repository here. And we're going to create it from GitHub Codespaces. Really don't like it. Really doesn't. So if we do Codespaces test public, sure, readme, sure, set. This will set. Oh, look at that. So it's got main by default now. So that's kicked in. That's fine. I see. So what Codespaces said was that I can personalize this with a configuration file. So what I need to do is personalizing Codespaces. Well, that's all about .NET. Using a pre-built container, creating a custom Codespace configuration. If none of the pre-built configurations meet your needs, you can create a custom configuration by adding a dev-container.json file. This file will be located in the root of your repository. This file can be located in the root of your repository or in a folder called .devcontainer. If the file is located, so let's create a new folder, add a file, create a new file, called that, and then I'm going to create one called devcontainer.json, right? And into there, I am going to create a new one called containers. This is the kitchen sink one. So in here, there was a dev container with a dev container JSON. So this has got a bunch of stuff in it that we don't necessarily need, but let's do this, the minimum. What have we got here? We've got name, cake, default, build, Docker file, args, install Docker. Let's just take that out just now. What else did it have? Settings, blah. Run arg, extensions, forwarded ports. Okay, let's leave all of that off just now. Am I missing something at the start? I'm missing an open bracket at start. You need to be over a little bit. Need to be over a little bit. And oh, that's a bit of sync. Okay. So in my Docker file, which is going to be back here, I'm going to create a Docker file. So this is where my knowledge of Docker comes out of place. But if I were to go over here and say, which one of these do we want to use? Bitrise mono, Bitrise, okay. No. Bitrise, mono. Don't want those ones. Which one would I use as the base? Would it be this one? Would it be this one that I would use, Matthias? And if it is, I'm going to say commit that into my main branch. And then I want a new file in here called Docker file. Docker file. So in here, I want to do the equivalent of this for this thing, I think. So which part do I need to pluck out? Image layers. Oh, no. See, this is, I know nothing about how to do this. So where can I find an example of using one of these in a Docker file? Maybe go to GitHub, cake, build, Docker. SU. What does that mean? Shut up? Maybe. No. Sample usage. Oh, here we go. This one. Super user. So there was one called 34. This one. Substitute user. That doesn't help with my question. Doesn't help. Sorry. If I take this, a copy might not work. Can I just do this then? What else do I need in this file in order to make it work? Don't necessarily want to do that. I just want to have a base image that's got cake installed on it already. So it's got a user code space. Oh no, hold on. User root, do a bunch of stuff. User code space, do a bunch of stuff. Is it enough to just have that? I genuinely don't know. I'm willing to try it. Commit new file. But this also wouldn't give us the cake.NET global tool, and this is part of the problem. It would give us, it would allow us to use cake buildnet. It would give us the ability to do running builds using this guy. Oh, no, not that one. That usage is wrong. I'm going to have to tell Pascal about that. That's not cake.exe. That would be .NET. I think that's where I was, Maurice, wasn't it? That's for so that Docker file is for creating the cake Docker image. So it's not a direct example usage. It's using that as the base, doing a bunch of stuff, and then running that, which is not what we want. It will give you a cake command available in path. Okay, so let's give it a try then. So we've got that. Let's see what it does. Opening quotes. This is where it won't actually do anything, but let's give it a try. 27 minutes left. So is there much work? There probably is, Matthias, but is there much work that we need to do in order to create a new Docker image that has the cake.tool in it? How much time are we talking here? An hour? 10 hours? Because it would be good to get those done at some point prior to the 1.0 release. It depends. That is probably the answer. Oh, it's doing something. I want to refactor it to support more distros using templates. So if we just got the minimum viable product out the door, rather than supporting multiple distros, how long are we talking? So what's it pulling now? What's it doing? I saw something there. Pulling dev container. Oh look, it's got from cake. It's pulling it. It's doing it. It's doing some stuff. Now this setup only needs to be done once. Once the code space is there, this doesn't need to be done again. But in theory, if this works, let's see what it does. Reading database, processing triggers, unpacking Git. Why is it doing all that stuff? Starting Codespace. Guess it needs Git to check out the code. So maybe we check to see if it was there, and if it wasn't there, it's a Linux container, Stevie, yes, but it's also one that I've told it specifically to use a base image that I've just told it to. But no, I understand, but I don't understand why it's doing it, because Maybes. Maybe Maurice. So it's starting Codespace. So it's doing something. So maybe based on whatever base image you give it, it will check to see what's there, and if the stuff isn't there, it will put it on. Yeah. That was my thought as well. See if we can see anything in the output. Successfully tagged. Docker create. Verifying, you see, verifying .NET Core dependencies. Installing all those things. Doing a bunch of stuff. Okay, let's give that a minute to start up and we'll see what it's doing. Gotcha. So this is taking longer to start up, but I wonder if that's because the base image that they provide already has all the Codespaces stuff installed, whereas we're using a different base image. So for that reason, it's taking longer. So maybe what's better would be to take another Docker file that takes the Codespaces base image and then applies cake on top of it. So then you wouldn't have to do it once the Codespace is initialized. That's another option. But I'm just curious to see if this works at all. That's true. But I think the pulling is finished though. It's now saying starting Codespace. See that Pascal is currently on. I'm going to copy this. Paste it. Is still thinking. Now, what I did understand was that because we went down this process and we've created our own custom one, if we modify the dev container files, we would need to first delete the code space and then regenerate it. So if we did, if we go here and we say Codespaces test, if we were to go in here and change the Docker file or change the dev container settings to add different extensions, settings, etc., we would need to blow this away to then rebuild it for those changes to take effect. Still thinking. Delete this one again because that one didn't work. It's still thinking. Curious. So the other thought process I had, Matthias, would I be able to, in a code space, run, say, yam or static, and have it running in the code space, and then be able to see the generated output. Can I do that? So I would need to add some forwarding of the ports. I'd need to add some forwarding of the ports so that it would be available, but in theory, I should then be able to see the static output in the browser that is being generated when I run static -- preview. Is that right? Could be old Linux. So is it maybe better to go the other way then and create a... So what would I need to do in my Docker file to install the .NET Global tool? So in here, what would I need to add in here to install the .NET Global tool as part of the build of the image that I'm running? This is taking longer, so let's nuke this one from orbit. And can I just do a run with... Let's try that then. So the base image is what? Where do I have that information? That was over here. Dev container. If I go to here and say this one and say this one, let's have a look there. Okay, so let's take this one, MCR, see the... Lots of different suggestions coming along now. .NET Nano server. That's a Windows server though. I don't think they support that at all. That wouldn't work unless you're suggesting that I just do take the run from there. Okay, that would make sense. So let's do that then. So in here, okay, do that. So what do I take as my base? I want to take this thing. I want to take the output of this thing. So what do I need to take as its name? How do I know what this thing is called? Is that even a silly question? What do I don't... That's... No, that's... I don't think that's what I want, Maurice. I want to take this, assuming it's there. I want to take the output of this Docker build, which already has all of this stuff in it, and I want to use it. So I'm making an assumption that it's published, but that's not going to be the PowerShell LTS Debian 10. That's something else. I want the output of this thing. First line in that maybe though. Don't know what that means. First line in that may be enough. First line of what? This one that I'm looking at right now, as in this line, or something else? So again, so you want me to take this, copy. Good start. Okay, so if I take this, save that. Failed to get Codespace info. That's fine. Okay, so back to here, open with Codespaces, new Codespace. You don't need command file in Linux if you added that. I don't know what I did. Where's my... You don't need CMD file on Linux if you added that. I don't know what I added. Here. Oh, that's not going to work, is it? That's not going to work. Let's see what it does. Didn't work. .NET install tool global, and then .NET cake info. Try that again. Let's go back to GitHub. Codespaces. Delete that again. Create Codespace. Codespaces -test. Seems that I'm not the only one that came up with that name. Let's try it again. The Docker container don't have the .NET tool folder on path, so you may have to add that path environment variable as well. Right. Give it a try. Let's see if it gets any further. That's why I wanted to use the complete container. I would have expected that the final thing would have had .NET in the path. 10 minutes. Thinking. Where's the fun in that? See, that didn't work either. Okay. So what do we think then? So that would be shell path .NET root tools, all of this stuff. Is that what we're thinking? I don't want to have to do that stuff. I really don't. I just want it to run. I just want to. It should just work. Run, install Docker, remove stuff, yada yada yada. What are you sending me there for? Get.net. Get.net. Copy. Paste. In here. For images on Docker Hub. Meaning, are you suggesting that I take one of these instead? So, as an example, use this one. I mean, I can try it. I want to try it. Codespaces. Delete. Create it. Get 13/codespaces.test. Run. It's found. That's maybe close to what we just put in, is it? You'll need all the files. Possibly. Oh, this is getting further. Hold on. So this was use this as the base and then do some chisel. This is getting further. Come on. And what else did we say in here? We said run .NET info and then .NET tool install cake and then .NET cake.info. So it'll write out what version of cake we've got installed. And in theory, we should be able to see that in the output if we can see it before it spins it up. But let's see what happens. Thinking. This will likely be the last test before we close down for the evening. Okay. What's the chances of this working? I would have liked it to have said more than just this. I don't really want to refresh this to see if it forces it to give me some other output. I think you need to copy the contents to your folder and add the cake installation. That's what I have though, right? I think you need to copy the So that's essentially what I've got though, right? I know I don't have all of it. I'm assuming that you're talking about but I mean a lot of this I don't want to install. I want to have just a base image that has .NET Core installed and then install Cake on top of it. So I'm not going to copy all of this stuff to install Node and Azure CLI because I don't want to install that. I'm going to hit refresh here. Still initializing. And then the other files that are in this dev container, again, there's a bunch of stuff that I don't necessarily want to have in there. I mean, this is doing installation of ZSH, symlinking stuff, again, installing Azure CLI. I want it just to have the bare minimum to get my project to build, which is .NET Core. Yeah, I'm not sure what that nomenclature is in terms of that base.docker file. And then we obviously wouldn't need all these library scripts because, I mean, we're not doing those. So what we've got is a Docker file and a dev container JSON. So I think we have everything that we need. All of that's commented out. But for some reason, it doesn't seem to want to work. But I also don't know why. Start closing down some of these things. All seems to think it's initializing. Okay, so I think we're going to have to call this quits. So some of the stuff we wanted to test out does seem to be working. So we were able to create a code space for Mateus's Cake group repository. We were able to install, once it was up and running, we were able to install cake.tool onto it. We were able to install cake.bakery and the debugging support. So we were able to get both IntelliSense and debugging support working on a Cake project running in the browser. What we then tried to do was this part, which was to get a custom dev container instance up and running where we were already had Cake installed, and this is where we've got to. So it's doesn't have that yet. That part isn't working. When more time could build Docker file and push container first, so it pulls that. True, but so assuming that we being the Cake team do the work of creating the cake.tool versions, then in theory I could be able to use that as the base as well. So but what you're suggesting would be to take GitHub Codespaces test to run Docker build against this guy, give it a name, and then publish it to say my Docker hub, and then use that as the new base of this thing, which would already have these steps included in it, correct? And if that worked, then this, when this spins up, .NET Cake should already be installed. That's maybe something to try for a different day. But for now, this was reasonably successful. A few stumbling blocks. I mean, it would be good to get some sort of feedback as to what's going on in this page, because at the minute this just seems to have hung. That's a fair point. So then you know at least if it builds. That's a valid point. But the feedback here, there's no feedback here. The whole failed to initialize. It would be good to get some feedback from those pages. Could be that the image that you're using is not set up correctly, and that's kind of why I wanted to use the base image that was there, because there's no mention in this documentation about, and then yes, that should tell you that it should get some feedback. Clone or download the repository. In the VS Code containers repository, navigate to the containers folder and choose a container configuration for fits your needs. So we'll use the .NET and JavaScript container. From there, copy the dev container folder to the rooted repository, commit, and whatever. So what is the examples in here? Azure .NET Core. So what do they have in their one then? So it does say to completely copy it. So it used, and this is going back to what Maurice was saying, this is the suggestion to use. I don't want to use all of that. I just want to use. So how is that different from what we're using currently? So we go back to here. We're using .NET Core SDK, whereas this is suggesting dev containers. So maybe there is something, I don't know. But okay, I'll try it later. But yeah, I think the feedback for the Codespaces team is there's more feedback required here to make this work, because it's just not clear what's going on currently at all in here. But anyway, let's go back to here, and I'm going to close this down so that I don't forget about it. But anyway, lots of, I mean, all these problems aside, it still has to be, you still have to think about the fact that once this is up and running, I could be on my phone, I could be on my iPad, I could be using a browser to write some code, to compile it, and potentially to git push, to commit, all that sort of stuff, without actually touching anything on my computer. So all of the setup, the configuration is all done in an isolated container, ready for throwing it away basically when you don't need it anymore. So not touching your own file system, but being able to have repository specific configuration and setup for your coding activities. It's quite compelling. It really is. Okay, but that's all I've got for just now. So I'm going to draw this to a close. So thank you all for coming to hang out. I appreciate it. Next week, haven't got any plans for. No, sorry, that's a lie. I'm not here next week. We've got holiday to take. I've got time off, so I won't be here next week. But the following week, unless there are any suggestions from anyone about what to look at, I think the plan would be to maybe look at cake.recipe. There's at least one lingering issue that Kim brought up, which I forget what it is now, but it's something to do with Git version. I can't remember exactly, but there's at least one issue on cake.recipe that needs to be addressed. Cake contrib. It's been assigned to the 2.1 milestone, I believe, or is it the V next one? I thought there was more open on here. Maybe it's in this one. No. Can't remember which one it is. Or maybe it's this. I don't know. Either I'm going to look at cake.recipe stuff again, or the start the process of updating some of the add-ins to use cake.recipe, the latest release version of cake.recipe. So starting that process of going through those and getting them updated. So that's kind of where my thought processes are. This would be good to get done as well, which is the creation of a new add-in specifically for the JetBrains tooling. Yeah, lots of things to do. But kind of why I wanted to look at the Codespaces stuff was potentially to have different Codespaces for some of the add-ins that I'm walking through. So, for example, having integration tests and things, or being able to run integration tests as part of my coding effort by having those tools already pre-installed for the add-in that is being exercised. So, for example, the example of if we were to create the new add-in for the JetBrains tools, it would already have the JetBrains tools already installed, ready to be exercised as part of the installation. And that's where the whole dev container thing comes in. You have those things already installed to then be able to spin it up and do some tests and stuff. So that's kind of why I wanted to see how the experience was. And it seems to be a little bit problematic with some of the beta stuff, but in general, there's definitely some promise in there. I think it was maybe this one, 490. What was 490? 490. Tag name in Azure Pipelines. Possibly. There was something along the lines. It was basically what I would like to, where I would like to get to. Oh no, well, it was kind of related. I would like to be able to get to a point where we can say that the publishing using cake.recipe works when running on GitHub Actions, taking Appia out of the equation. So at the minute, that currently doesn't work for reasons. So perhaps what we need to do is investigate why Git version doesn't work when it's running on a tag, and if there is anything we can do in cake.recipe to facilitate that, or we need to figure out why Git version is broken and fix it. So that's where I would like to get to. But anyway, I need to close up. So that's me for tonight. Like I say, not here next week. Following week, we'll do something. So try not to miss me too much. And I hope you all continue to survive the COVID. We're starting to get more restrictions in play up here in Scotland. So I hope that you are all safe and staying safe, staying away from the COVIDs, and talk to you later. Bye bye.